So glad you could join us today. My name is Cindy Peister, and I'm with Unitarian Universalist for Just Economic Community. And what we're going to talk about in our webinar today is stopping ICE and defending joy and organizing rage. And we'll be having Christine Dunbar, who is a longtime UU activist with us, and also Leo Martinez, who has done a lot of work with Ventura County Defensa. So we're going to start off today with Christine. Um, Christine is a New Jersey-based UU, and UUs are known for their faith-based social justice concern and action. And Christine is a prime example of that. She participated in the July 13th Faith Leaders protest at Delaney Hall in Newark, New Jersey, and has come away from that event with her own compelling experience to share. She is a UU Faith Action New Jersey liaison with UU Fellowship of Sussex County. She trained in 2017 as an original member of the Friends Committee on National Legislation Peace Advocacy Team. She is also a member of the UUFANJ Environmental Justice Force and is Paulin's Kill Watershed Coordinator at the Food Shed Alliance. And she has a lot of experience with a longstanding commitment to conservation advocacy. She is going to discuss her experience at Delaney Hall, which was just ahead of the death of Edwin Jovenhovny Lopez Corneo, a 41-year-old Salvadoran detainee who died at Delaney Hall ICE detention facility in Newark, New Jersey, following a medical urgency just days ago. Christine will share what grounded motivated her participation, and she has a wonderful slideshow to share with us. So go ahead, Christine, if you would, and take it away. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to everyone and to Sally and this wonderful group I'm newly introduced to be able to, it's given me a chance to be able to kind of digest my experience and to really come to some closure on it. And I feel very humbled being able to share that with you today. I was, we've all been bombarded in the news with day after day, night after night, with ICE incidents across the country. And I found myself sinking into sort of a dismal rabbit hole of sadness. And a friend said to me, that's in my UU Fellowship of Sussex County, New Jersey, and I'll show you where that is in a minute. She said, gee, I would like to go to Delaney Hall. And I said, that might be good. It might be really hard, but it would be good. And so that's when I received an invitation from our UU Faith Action New Jersey. Charles Laughlin and Marlene Miller run that program, and it was for faith leaders. And so first I kind of balked, right? Because I'm really not a faith leader. What I am is a participant in the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship for a few decades now. And I'm currently on their board as secretary, and I'm the connection between UU Faith Action New Jersey and opportunities. I present opportunities to our very small congregation there. So when I got this invitation, unfortunately, my friend was out of the country at the time. I said, I'm not a faith leader, but my heart and my spirit are with this. And I think it will lift me in the end if I can just endure what I'm about to see. And so, yeah, I went down and I joined them, and I'm very happy that I did. And perhaps we'll go back sometime, but maybe not right away. So let me begin my my sharing with you. Okay, I hope everyone can see this.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the the objective, really, of introduction to the objective of us going down is that we will not stand for profiting off of human suffering. And this was the emphasis of our particular protests. And apparently many, there had been many protests before, all with various themes, but this was our focus during this 3-day, it was a 3-day event that people were invited, clergy and faith leaders from all around the country were invited to join us for a 3-day event that began at Montclair congregation in New Jersey. So where was this? This is actually, oops. Okay, so this is, of course, you guys are over here, Ventura, yay, Ventura. I'm a Pedro girl, San Pedro girl. Here we go. But this is where New Jersey is, a little state. And this is where Newark is, right here. And we have, of course, we have 2 ICE detention centers. One is in Newark, and it has a capacity, I believe, of about 1,000 people. And the other is in Elizabeth, which has fewer beds, which is very, very nearby. Interesting fun fact about Elizabeth is that it is now the #1 most productive seaport in the world. Or maybe that's the United States. That's taken away from LA. And my dad was a longshoreman in Long Beach and San Pedro there. So he wouldn't have liked that very much, I don't think. But he hasn't been with us for a while. So all roads lead to Delaney. And the push here at this particular faith leader protest was to evict the Geo Group, which is a private prison corporation. And I'm starting to love Newark. It's not been easy for me. By the way, I live up in this corner right here in the forests here in Sparta, where I work for the Food Shed Alliance. And the Food Shed Alliance works at the intersection of food farming and the environment. And I run the environmental program there. And I'm outside a lot in the field, doing a lot of monitoring of the ecology and particularly the river and the water. I'm working on a wild and scenic project right now for my Pollenskill watershed community. So this is just a sample of the wonderful notice that I received in the mail. The event went from Sunday through Tuesday, and it was striking to me, and the timing was perfect for me with my work. I had recently fallen. I had was playing pickleball, and I went for a lob, and I fell backwards, and I didn't want to hit my head, so I stuck my arm out, and I actually broke my arm and my wrist. So it was like, whoa, when space opens up, sometimes it's such a beautiful thing that happens. And that's what happened to me. I received this invitation and went ahead and registered for only Monday. Okay, and this picture was taken, and it's of Charles Laughlin, and he is the executive director of our New Jersey, our Faith Action New Jersey, UU Faith Action New Jersey. And what he is saying here is that people are they went on a hunger strike. And so, yes, so I signed up and away I went. So we gathered, keep doing that. In my other life, I was a teacher and I had to put up PowerPoint presentations for kids who weren't in class so they could see them at home. But I didn't quite master it, and I haven't done one for a few years now, so bear with me. So I think it's very interesting that our site of gathering for the second day was at the oldest church in Newark, and it was founded in 1666. This, if you're from the West Coast, this makes your head spin a little bit, I know, right? Congregational church, and then it turned into a Presbyterian church. And then the current structure is over here on the right. This is the picture from their website. And this is, I guess, a rendition of what the original church in Newark looked like. But I love history, so there it is. That's where we met, at the old First Presbyterian Church of Newark on Broad Street in Newark. And it was really stark when we entered. A friend from our board of directors at the UU Fellowship of Sussex County and I went together, and it was just really striking when we went in, because we went into the annex where they were serving breakfast at 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the morning, and it was just like a whole sea of people with clergy collars on. And it just took me back, and a particularly poignant experience that I had was sitting next to a young woman who was in the Bronx. And what she was is she was part of a lookout system for ICE cars and to alert neighbors. But she also spoke several languages, so she was an interpreter. So that when there was an altercation between an ICE and an immigrant or supposed immigrant, that she could help with the communications. So she was always on alert doing this, and she was a lay person from a churches from all over, faith leaders from all over, different denominations attended. I can't say. I'm thinking it might have been Catholic, but I don't know. It doesn't matter. So many good conversations took place in that initial gathering. As the day went on, after we had our little repast together, we went into the main sanctuary. And this was an incredible lifting of spirits for all of us. There were speakers from all sorts of community groups within Newark who had been working themselves, on various social justice issues, women's issues, drug-related problems. They all were speaking, and rabbis were speaking there, and we had an Oman, I believe. So it was very, very, it brought us all together with the same heart in what we were about to do together later in the day, right? So after this, we went in, we had lunch, and then we came back. And what was done then is they explained to us that a lawyer was going to come and talk to us about the legality of what we were doing. And if we did have altercations with ICE, what to do and what not to do, such as you never would turn your back. You always face. If you're going to back up from an ICE officer, you back up very, very slowly with your hands out. What happens if you get pepper sprayed? Well, there was somebody there who had been pepper sprayed. In fact, a few people, as it turns out, had been. And they said that, well, where you're going to Delaney Hall, it was about a 20-minute drive that we would make in the afternoon. There are medics there, and there's first aid booths, and they'll be able to help you, through that. And there is an ambulance that is readily available, and the police might be there. Also, the Newark police, the Ross Baraka, who is the mayor, may be calling the police to be there also, because they've been notified that there's going to be this protest. So all of this, the legality of it, the medical side of it, what to do, what not to do, was all presented during the training after lunch. And so they passed around, as I was about to say, they passed around these 3 colors, green, yellow, and red. And you were to choose which armband you were going to put on. And each group, the green, yellow, and the red, would have a different job to do when we got there. And the green group was the group that would be across the street from Delaney Hall. And they would be singing songs. As you can see, we had a fabulous song leaders here going up and down the aisle, lifting us with songs. Hold on, hold on. And then there would be the green group. If you chose that, you would be given a ribbon, and it would have the name of a detainee, and it would also have the name of, if he was a brother, of course, if he was a father, and other information on it. So his name. And then what you would be doing is you would be tying it to the outer fence at Delaney Hall when we went. And then there was the red group, and they would go into the inner gate. Okay. And they would be carrying signs, and we would carry the evictio sign, and we also would be carrying these huge, beautiful butterflies that on day 1 that I missed were created, and that is the symbol of for the detainees, or because they're migrants, and they're hopefully going to be transformed at some point into a beautiful life, once they get through what they're going through. So the red group would be carrying the butterflies, and they would also be, they would be carrying the signs and go into the inner gate, where they would fasten the butterflies to the inner gate, and we would be setting down our signs, there. So that was the part that was kind of risky, the most risky. But it was only if a car supposedly was coming in and out during the time of the protest. All right, so enough of that. Let's go on to the next. Okay, so after we actually practiced, how we were going to file in and everything. You'll see a picture of that. But here we are. We're in front of Delaney Hall here, and we're singing, and we're holding up our hands, towards the Delaney Hall, with blessings to the detainees that are inside. And we have our marvelous, courageous, and daring leaders with us, leading us in songs and giving us all the support that we needed to do this. And I would like to say that because, I'm not a faith leader, I don't really network with them. I really didn't know them by name. But I will tell you that this lovely woman on the left here, she was one of the trainers, and she is the minister at the, I think it's the Montclair, Sally, you can correct me, the Montclair congregation. And she did a wonderful job, along with this other pastor here. And this, by the way, is the back of my minister. We have a half-time minister up in Sussex County, New Jersey, and this is Mary Tebow. And she's been on many of these protests, I learned. She's so good. So, all right, so then it became time. It was about 5 o'clock in the evening. It was a long day for all of us. It's time for us to approach Delaney Hall. And we have our cheerleaders here helping us. And then we have the beautiful butterflies that were made on day one here. And then in back of them are the sign carriers, Evict Geo. And in back of them are the yellow group with the ribbons that will be given out. So this is a picture of the red group going into the inner gate area. And you can kind of see here where they've hung one of the butterfly signs. Here's a geo sign down here. And now they've got their hands out and they're backing up. Except for this fellow here who forgot to back up. That was me. I turned around and I knew to walk slowly with my hands out, but I just helped somebody fasten a butterfly, set down a sign, and forgot sort of the protocol. But it was my first time, so hey. And then as you finished your job going in here, you just kind of said a prayer, I suppose, to the detainees as you finished your work and you put forth your gift to them. And then this is the yellow group, which is right outside of where the red group was. And you can see that the names here are of all the detainees that are in the facility. And the black ones, unfortunately, are sort of nationwide, those that have lost their lives in the hands of ICE or at a detention center. So we did have some of those, of course. I want to draw your attention to what is in the background, because this place that we were at is the most grossly despicable place on earth. What you see here are chemical drums, or they could be sewage drums. Maybe that's chemical and maybe that's sewage. And this is one of the busiest chemical industrial places, exuding all sorts of gross films. You can see some people were wearing masks. You may have noticed that before. It wasn't because of COVID. It was because you could hardly breathe when you were there. And right in front of Delaney, along the side here, were tractor trailer trucks. And they were zooming across. And many of them, to our delight, of course, were honking their horns in support. So that was really cool. But you also can see here across the street, ours is the green group, and they are listening for the names of the detainees to be read, and they are chanting the name again. Hard to hear, and then singing songs of support to them. So yeah, as I mentioned, it's one of the largest sewage treatment facilities in the United States. In Delaney Hall, there's frequent sewage backups, and there's just such a stench. It's just a mixture of chemicals and sewage. And right adjacent to Delaney Hall, before I forget to mention, there is the Essex County Jail. Okay, Newark is in Essex County. So, yeah, it was just environmental injustice and social injustice just meeting head on at that moment also. Okay, so the message I have been receiving is that, and that I've learned that the family of Edwin Giovanni Lopez Corneja has requests. Now, he was the young man, 39 years of age, who um, who was very sick inside of Delaney Hall. He had diabetes. He had heart condition. He had medication for that, and he was never given that. And then when he finally collapsed, he was rushed to the hospital and found dead. Okay. So the family would, of course, like a full and open New Jersey Attorney General investigation. They're asking for all records, medical records, to be released by Geo and ICE. And they want the immediate release of all medically fragile detainees. Okay. And they want us to push our Governor Mikey Sherrill, to open an investigation into the health crisis at Delaney Hall. So some takeaway thoughts that I have are that, and this also, a lot of these thoughts and everything have been shared to me by Charles Laughlin, Reverend Charles Laughlin, and Marlene Miller from RUU, New Jersey Faith Action. And he emphasized that racism is at the very heart of all that we seek to change together, and that power is the goal, and at the expense of others is their means. If we want to help these detainees, which used to be able to go before a judge and there would be a bond that they could get, but bonds haven't been granted. But what is being asked for is bail money. And you can send that through American Friends Service Committee, from what I understand. There's also, I learned, that folks can attend every Monday night a vigil at about 6:30. You'll be trained. This will be right at Delaney Hall. There was a lot of parking there when I was there, so you wouldn't have a problem with that. It would be the stench more than anything. And you can always go to Faith Action New Jersey for the details on that if you're folks from this area. It would be greatly appreciated. And of course, to call, or write your government officials. I would like to mention one other thing that I forgot to mention. We were very, very fortunate. We were very fortunate to see, as we were lined up to go do our jobs, there was a detainee that was released, and his family was there waiting for him. And he was carrying with him a plastic bag. It must have only had like a toothbrush in it, if even that, in it. And when he heard us singing songs, outside for them, he just turned around and he gave us the biggest, most beautiful smile I've seen in a long time. And he waved to us. So that was just so awesome. All right. So now, lastly, these are the people that I will be calling. I will be calling Governor Sherrill, because even though she seems to be on top of this with her Attorney General, she has to do more, because this is a facility that is in the state of New Jersey, and it has not been inspected. It's only the kitchen. Okay, the air conditioning apparently has gone out. It's really hot and humid here now in New Jersey. I'm sure it's hot and humid in Ventura and where you are also. But I mean, you don't allow this to happen to people who are members of your community in New Jersey. Okay, and so they've got to do much more. Representative McIver, I've heard nothing but good things about her. She's in District 10. She's not in my district, but she needs to be contacted to do what she can. And then Senator Booker, and also Senator Kim, but I'm less worried about Senator Kim than I am Senator Booker at this point in time. And they need to do all they can do from the federal end, these two. So I'm going to stop sharing. I think that's the last slide. Yep. All right. Thank you for listening, guys. This meant a lot to me.
Christine, that was just amazing. Really uplifting to see that organizations and faith leaders would come together in support of this much needed work at Delaney Hall. And I'm sure that each one of those leaders took that back to their congregations and their communities, just like you're doing with us now. And the fact of the location that you shared is just terrific. So thank you so much. And I will follow up with Q&A after we hear from Leo. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be joined by Leo Martinez. He was born and raised in Ventura County, and he set up a space that is Lab 805, which is our area code. And it's been functioning for a very long time and doing wonderful work in our communities. And it was operational ahead of ICE. So they were already addressing police brutality and tenant rights. And it evolved further as ICE's abuses became apparent here in our own community. And Leo is so modest. He says he considers himself fortunate to have been one of the founding members. Leo, how could have you been anything else? Anyway, he's been targeted himself. He's had his own home raided. He's been involved in an incident with ICE where they crashed into his car, and maybe he'll touch on that. And he's going to discuss how VC Defensa is one of the most effective rapid response teams and neighborhood-based support networks in the United States, and how effective it's been. And that they've trained around the country, especially during the height of the federal invasions in Los Angeles, Chicago, and Minnesota. And the VC Defensa is not only serving as a future of its own community organizing efforts, but it's serving as an effective model for what can be implemented in every high-risk neighborhood. Not only to get ICE out, but also to build strong communities. So Leo, thank you so very much for joining us. And will you take it from here, please?
Thank you very much, and it's an honor to be with you guys. I'm incredibly proud to be on this webinar as well with Christine. What they were doing out there at Delaney Hall was incredible, and I think it goes to the testament of the type of work that we do when we care about these things, right? Over there, it might be a lot of Haitian immigrants. Over here in our county in particular, it's a lot of Mexican immigrants. And for some of us, when we look at the reason why immigration to this country is happening, we could look at Haiti and trace that directly back to the overthrow of their government by the United States, right? When we look at why the migrants in Mexico end up fleeing, there's a phrase that's very common amongst Mexicans that it's like, poor Mexico, so far from God and so close to the United States. So many times do we feel as children of immigrants justified in our outrage on the work that we do here because we're doing it in the defense and out of the love for our community. And that's a point that I try to drive across every time I get to do a speech or something like that, is I have to remind everybody, we're doing this not out of our hate for ICE agents. We do this out of a tremendous amount of love for our people and our community. And through these struggles that we have, my definition of our people has expanded beyond just Mexican immigrants into all types of different white folks and Muslim folks during the destruction of Palestine, and student groups, and Black folks. So it's turned into anybody that I could be shoulder to shoulder with and push against the injustice. Especially when we look at this situation of migrant folks. It's a civil offense to be in this country undocumented. No other civil offense in this entire country gets treated with this amount of hostility and aggression and disrespect on that level. Um, so for so many of us that grew up in this environment, that grew up with having friends and family deported, we see our work as more of a love letter to our community, because we don't want the thanks for this. We don't, the work that we do is the thanks for our parents and our friends and family that put in so much work to give us the privilege of citizenship to be in this position. And we definitely don't look at ourselves as heroes. We look at ourselves as, um, I guess you could say, stewards of the community in that regards, right? The people are incredibly talented. And when we did our volunteer call outs originally, we were impressed by such a diverse group of folks that showed up, from faith-based organizations to all different ethnic backgrounds and makeups, queer folks, trans folks, Black folks, brown folks, white folks, folks that had no connection directly to anybody that was undocumented, but just because of that outrage, were willing to pull up. And we're also incredibly proud that we were able to find something for everybody to do. So that was the beginning of forming this group. And once we saw that, we said, okay, cool. One of also the most important things that we had to operate at, like that we had to implement as a group, is we had to make it abundantly clear to everybody that we have to operate with our faces completely out in the open. We're not going to be covering our faces. We're not going to be hiding anything. And we have to operate as up and up as we could possibly do it, because we know the repression is inevitable. And our biggest defense is going to be neighbors and everybody knowing exactly who we are and seeing us in their neighborhood on a regular basis while we do the outreach and while we build this organization. And we also pride ourselves so much with trying to find something for everybody to be able to do. One of the best examples is here in this very webinar. Jim Yarbrough, who's in the audience today. He is an older gentleman that was in part of the East County. He's not on social media. He doesn't have a cell phone. He doesn't necessarily speak Spanish, but I've known Jim for a long time from another organization that we were in before. And it might have taken a while, but we had to figure out what to do. You know, how can Jim help? And Jim ended up being one of our most vital volunteers, because what he could do is he was able to go down to the local ICE office and hang out there every morning while people had check-in appointments. And a lot of those people didn't come out of those check-in appointments, but the point is Jim was there with outreach material and with flyers and with trifold brochures and content, and touching base with every person that went into those check-in appointments and came out and said, here's some contact information for a group that's trying to help and that's trying to support and trying to have your back. So that was incredible that we were able to find, that we were able to have Jim do that on such a consistent basis, because he didn't need to be on social media for that. He didn't need to have a cell phone for that. He understood what his assignment was. He moved according to his schedule. He was able to do that as much as he could. And that's kind of an example of how we operate around the county. We have, I think right now, a little bit under 1,000 volunteers. But of those volunteers, it's not volunteers that are doing this work every day, day in, day out. That's a much smaller group, but it's 1,000 people who are in the group chats that it can tap in at whatever point in time that they want. They could see what's going on. They could get updated. They could touch base with somebody else, and they could get active. And also, and most importantly, is to be active in their immediate neighborhoods. That is the thing that we pride ourselves on too, is we have the county divided up into 4 main groups, and those are subdivided into hotspots and neighborhoods. And originally, when we started doing this work, we started as a rapid response team with a hotline and a lot of Know Your Rights workshops. The first 6 months of the administration, we must have given hundreds of workshops, and a lot of them was me and two other people that were doing those workshops, sometimes two a day, sometimes three a day. We don't do so many workshops anymore now, but it's because we evolved as an organization after what we refer to around here as the Glass House raid, when Los Angeles got invaded by hundreds of ICE agents, hundreds of Border Patrol agents, the National Guard. We are the county north of Los Angeles, immediately north, but we felt the repercussions and the devastation of them showing up to invade Los Angeles because we have two military bases here locally, and that's exactly where all of this infrastructure was set up to be able to operate out of. So every morning they would take these caravans and drive out to Los Angeles at around 11 o'clock in the morning. But from 6 o'clock in the morning till 11, they were trying to terrorize our neighborhoods here to try and make arrests in our neighborhoods. So the month of June of last year was really where we fortified ourselves as an incredibly effective group in that regards. What we saw happen in our communities when that invasion happened was, even though we had done hundreds of Know Your Rights workshops leading up until that point, the minute that invasion happened, nobody was leaving their house. Nobody wanted to leave their house. Everybody was in fear. Nobody was going to work. Kids were not going to school. Thank God it was at least at the end of summer, so that kind of helped out a little bit, or else, those first few weeks, the attendance plummeted tremendously in schools and in workplaces, and you could visually see it in the streets. I remember driving through neighborhoods in the evening that normally you have neighborhoods with a lot of lights and a lot of activity and a lot of people playing soccer at the park, or a lot of people casually walking around that, and nobody was on the streets. Nobody had their lights on in their house. Everybody was in the dark. That once that invasion left and it moved on to Chicago, all the skills that we learned, everything that we picked up on, we immediately shared that with as many teams in Chicago and Minnesota, Massachusetts. We had teams that were contacting us from everywhere. Everybody at this point kind of knew who we were, because at the end of that invasion, the cherry on their cake was to invade a local marijuana operation that was here, a legalized marijuana grow operation that hired hundreds of people. It was a massive facility. That was a very devastating day for us when they invaded that. But also that pushed our organization to evolve from the Know Your Rights workshops and from the rapid response teams to a full-blown organization, to where now, a year later, we have 60 to 70 doctors, medical professionals that originally reached out to us because when that raid happened, ICE agents took people to the hospital, and so many medical professionals were outraged that ICE was there that in the following months they joined our group. Now they have a full-on organization within our group, and they got their malpractice insurance, and they're ready to make house calls, and they did their own fundraising for backpacks that have a ton of specialized medical equipment in there, so folks don't want to leave their house, they don't have to, they could go do house calls now. Or when back to school season came last year, we had a flood of education professionals that reached out to us. So now there's a contingency also of 60 to 70 of them that are working on an after school program and summer programs that are going to be implemented later on. We also have a massive family support team, and the way that the family support team developed, all of these projects developed out of a necessity that the community addressed to us. And we slowly started to see, hey, what can we do about this? We don't, as an organization, for example, have a laundry list of things that we do. We meet with families, we hear their story out, and then we see, okay, what is it that we need to do? My mom, for example, has right now 3 or 4 ladies whose husbands were taken, and she has to teach them how to drive. She has to give them driving lessons so that they could get their licenses so that they could drive now, because if they don't drive, nobody in the house is able to drive. That's a program that she developed and that she's doing. So all these different projects that developed out from that originally started from some kind of need that we were trying to address within our community. The two most I mean, for me, the most impressive part of this organization is that we're 100% volunteer based. Nobody cashes a salary here. Nobody gets, everything. So that means that all the donations that come into us or the grants that we just started in the last few months being able to pull down, so much of that goes to family support. So much of that is going to build our long-term vision. We always say that if ICE disappeared tomorrow, we would grow as an organization because we want to focus on all the other issues that folks have when we meet with families. The so many families have so many other issues aside from just having someone deported, and these things just intensify everything, right? There's housing insecurity, there's job insecurity, there's transportation insecurity, there's food insecurity. We have a regular pantry here at the shop, but also at the local community college. One of our volunteers that was a professor there was able to get every Friday, we have a truckload that is ready to serve 300 families, and they are consistently there every Friday. So now folks know that they could show up every Friday and get milk, eggs, fruits, vegetables, and bread for their family every Friday. The other super impressive thing that we had to develop out last June when nobody was leaving their houses is that we had to figure out how are we going to bring all of the workshops and things like that directly to the people. We had to go out into the streets, visit all the hotspot neighborhoods, which are almost always apartment complexes or very densely packed housing areas. And we had to start building WhatsApp groups. We started building WhatsApp groups that were specially catering and focusing on those hard hit neighborhoods. And we were able to grow those WhatsApp groups into thousands of people across the county. So the beautiful part about this is that before the WhatsApp groups, the way that we operated was people would call in, we would get a hotline call, we would alert the response team that was there localized to the area. People would message in with how long it would take them to get there, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, anybody under 15 minutes. And then we would immediately go and respond. We did incredibly well like that. We kicked ICE out of so many neighborhoods. I take that back. Our legal department says we're not allowed to say we kick them out. We legally observe them, but we have legally observed the heck out of ICE agents out of neighborhoods all over this county. We're incredibly proud of. But it's also very demanding on our volunteers to try and be everywhere all at once. So once we started reaching out and building these WhatsApp groups in the neighborhoods, the beautiful part of this is that that's where we would drop videos for the trainings. That's where we would drop the most commonly seen ICE vehicles. That's where we would drop a lot of day-to-day, or when there was back to school stuff, we would drop a video in there and be like, hey, talk to the administrators, talk to the teachers at your school. This is a general blueprint on how you could protect your school on the drop-off lines and the pickup lines in the morning and in the afternoon. So many people started doing the work on their own just simply because we were providing those resources there. To where fast forward to now, so many of those neighborhoods have kicked out ICE agents on their own without us even having to be there, even though we're still patrolling every morning from 5 to 7 a.m., which is 90% of the activity that we have in this county. The makeup of this county is very unique in the sense that we have a really high level of undocumented folks that live in the county, specifically because the main export of this county is agriculture. Yes, we have those 2 military bases and we have a lot of military defense contractors out here, but the truth is we are surrounded by fields everywhere. Its main export is strawberries, it's oranges, it's lemons, it's avocados, celery, things like that. So it's so much of the workforce in those fields is undocumented. And that's why originally when we started looking at the makeup of the county, we said, how are we going to be able to protect the entire county? Until we realized that these ICE agents were showing up to very specific neighborhoods. And once we started patrolling at 5 a.m., we saw why those neighborhoods were being hit. Because, for example, you have a densely packed apartment complex that's surrounded by regular houses. ICE agents are going to show up there because it's almost very similar to like the ocean. Yes, the ocean is vast, but the majority of the life is around the coral reefs. And at 5:30, 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, all of these densely packed neighborhoods, which undocumented folks that normally work in the fields, they're all coming out of their house in the morning and they're either waiting for rides because everybody's carpooling, or they're showing up to give somebody a ride because, again, everybody's carpooling. So you have cars with 2, 3, 4, 5 people in them that are scattered through the main streets that then take off to go to whichever field or whichever factory or whichever packing house they work at. Um, we have it's also, we got so good at doing this work that it kind of became a double-edged sword, in the sense that when we kick our local ICE agents out of enough neighborhoods on any given week, they get flustered, they get frustrated, and they don't visit us anymore. They drive an hour out of the county in any direction to go pick up and go make arrests in other counties to make up their quota and to make up their numbers that they can't get in this county. So we've had to also train the surrounding response teams, and kind of incorporated some of their stuff into our stuff and back and forth, so that they could be prepared as well. Um, and also, when we do a decent enough job in the neighborhoods on any given week, that just means that they end up arresting more people either at the local county jail, or, like Jim has seen, you see an uptick of people that go into their check-in appointments that are not coming out of those appointments anymore, which causes us a lot of rage and anger, because people that are going to their check-in appointments are almost always people that are in the process of getting a green card, or that they have an asylum claim or some type of legal process. So when people say, oh, we wish people would just come here legally, it's like, everybody that goes to these check-in appointments are the ones on their best behavior that are doing it the most correct way possible, and they're the ones that are feeling the brunt of these arrests and deportations. We've had people there, and Jim has infinitely more stories than I do about this, but I remember one specific day, there was 2 men that were taken and deported on that day, and both of those men, one had a DUI that was 12 years old, and the other one had a DUI that was 9 years old. Both men paid everything. They cleared out the DUI, went to the classes, did all that. That was in their history. That was so far behind them. But because of Trump's law of the Lake and Riley Act, when he first came in, now anybody that has any type of criminal record or any type of jail record at any point in time qualifies for a deportation. So that makes it completely wild and unjust, because how many people have DUIs in this country? I don't drink personally, but how many judges, DAs, and prosecutors and people within the government have DUIs all over the place? And so our folks are dealing with the brunt of that. Also, one of the things that made us very effective on the ground, and this goes to something that Christine was touching on too, is that when we talk to our legal team, which, thank goodness, we have an incredibly strong legal team, we had to pick their brain on what we could do and what we couldn't do. And it basically came down to 3 main things that we really leaned hard on to push that line. It basically came down to, we can't touch them, we can't threaten their lives, and we can't block them in, either physically with our person or with our car. Everything else outside of that is fair game, which is why we got so good at annoying and harassing them out of neighborhoods. So many of our patrol cars have dash cams, have PA systems where we could yell at them at full volume, or alert the community and let the community know that they're there. Through the WhatsApp groups, everybody knows, hey, if you get an alert, or if you hear that they're there or something's going on, if you are undocumented, lock down your house, lock it in. But anybody else in that neighborhood that does have the privilege of citizenship, your job is to go out into the streets and kick them out. So it's a beautiful ecosystem. We're continuing to evolve. We're growing. September 6th locally at the Performing Arts Center, and it will be streamed from Breakthrough News. We are doing a huge summit where we've invited a lot of rapid response teams from across the country, so we could do some skill sharing and some workshops and things like that. I'll send you guys the invite as well. But yeah, everything's in an open book. There's no secrets here. We've dealt with repression. So many of us have been pepper sprayed, had guns pointed at us. Like it was mentioned, I've been arrested twice by them. They ruined 2 of my cars. They wrecked 2 of my cars. They've raided my house, raided the shop here, which is one of our main organizing space. But our legal team has assured us that we're not doing anything wrong. And we're incredibly proud to be the opposition to these fascists on any given day, and we'll continue to push that line because again, this comes from a tremendous amount of love for our people, not from hate towards any of these agents. Even though, yes, I do hate them, but it doesn't come from that. That's not what drives this. It's not the driving force. Thank you.
Wow, 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 Leo. I think we all have a big round of applause for you on that. Thank you so much. I know, you're not a hero, but you sure are a leader for this community, and you've done so much. And I see Diana's here. I know she plays a big role with VC Defensa.
Yeah, Diana's incredible.
So I want to open it up to Q&A, but I do have a couple questions for you ahead of that, if I may, Leo. I wanted to know if you could elucidate a little bit on the linkage between the police action, ICE, and the military, all of that, and then uh, as we go through the changes that are happening around the country right now in terms of there being ICE in multiple locations at the same time where communities weren't organized, if you have any specific suggestions about.
Yeah, in regards to ICE being more intense in communities that aren't organized, well, there's only one solution for that. There's no substitute for knocking on doors and getting everybody together. There's no magic wand that we have or secret formula that we have. We're more than happy to share that information with anybody and everyone, how we built our organization. As far as collaboration between local law enforcement or federal agents and the ICE agents, like I said, we do have two military bases here. But to be honest, the connection between them is not as strong as what we initially thought it was. I think we attribute a lot of that to the fact that we were very aggressive early on exposing any of those connections. So, for example, when we find them in a neighborhood and we get behind them, when we alert everybody that they're there, the common thing that the ICE agents would do once we ran around in the streets for a while is they would either go hide on the military base because it's a federal facility and they know that we can't follow them there, or they would go to the local law enforcement office and they would call in and say, hey, there's this person following me and they're road raging and I fear for my life, which was the common thing that they would always say, which would lead to our volunteers getting pulled over. And when the officer would say, hey, we got a report that this vehicle was aggressively chasing another car or road raging or this, that, and the other, and they feared for their life, we would laugh. And the thing that I would tell everybody is like, by the time that officer walks up to your window, you need to start recording on your phone and you need to have that camera in the officer's face and immediately say, hey, why are you playing security guard for ICE agents? Because that would immediately push them on the defensive. That would put them on the defensive, but more importantly, and it happened early on with us, with local Oxnard PD, is once that video came out of me having that interaction with the local cops in front of their police department, they caught a firestorm of problems at their next city council meeting. We heard that behind closed doors, the police chief got chewed out by anyone and everyone. We also heard that the local police chief had to call the local ICE facility and beg them to stop having their officers show up to their police department because it was giving them horrible PR and it was completely throwing a monkey wrench in any of their outreach and any of their attempts to build good rapport within their community. So we're able to lean on the public relations part of it. We were able to dissuade them early on from getting more involved with ICE from the very beginning because early on we were looking for those connections. We knew they were there. The local Ventura Police Department as well. Early on when that invasion of Los Angeles happened, one of the mornings, two different small caravans of vehicles got kicked out of two different parts of the county, and both of those caravans ended up going to the local Ventura Police Department, and we had people all like crowding around there because we had two response teams from different parts that showed up, and that video went viral as well, of them literally pulling into the back parking lot of the local police department, which forced the local police department to make a public statement saying, no, that's not true. They used our front parking lot unknowingly to us. We didn't know that they were doing that, blah, 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 blah. And that was the last that we ever heard of them showing up or getting back up or anything from local Ventura PD. The biggest allies that they have here locally are Highway Patrol, which has gotten very aggressive with our patrollers. And I think that has to do with the fact that they don't really have anybody that they're being held accountable to locally. And that's why they're so aggressive. And the local sheriff's department, we do know that they support them under the table with their hands behind their back. And it's not as explicitly open, but those tethers are still there, and we're finding ways to put pressure on them too. More than anything at the local county jail, because the sheriff runs the local county jail. So there is so many little incidents to where we're like, oh, they wouldn't have been able to do that without somebody in the sheriff's department giving them the heads up about that. But those tethers are not as strong as they are in other parts of the country. And again, I think it has so much to do with the fact that we were able to bully them out of it really early on.
Wow. Okay. That's great. Leo, we have a question here from one of our members, Brian. Brian, do you want to ask a question or comment?
Yeah, my question is for Leo. Leo, I'm a member of First Unitarian Church in Dallas. And last month I attended a meeting where it was suggested that members of the congregation might want to put together a rapid response team. In Dallas, depending on who you listen to, Dallas has the second or the third most ICE detentions, but we have not had like the invasion of federal officers like Los Angeles and Minneapolis and Chicago. And there are some people who have been working with other groups. Like me, I've been observing in immigration court in Dallas. There's another group that works out in the parking lot next to the ICE field office. They flag down people in the street and suggest to them that they park in an abandoned parking lot over there, and instead of parking in the ICE parking lot, and if they're detained, ICE is going to tow their car. And the day that I went and did that, I didn't really help anybody. I just talked to the other volunteers, but I would have, I was willing to be one of the people if they send a white guy like me into the front door to deliver some medicine, or I would have gone with another volunteer to drive somebody's car home for them. And then there's a group, El Movimiento, who goes out and patrol for ICE and runs a hotline primarily to report encounters with ICE, but also to provide information to people. And they work with ICE out and people over papers. So my question is, do you have a suggestion for what a group of people from a church might do together that would be analogous to the group going and working at the local food bank, or going and feeding people at a homeless shelter, but in the area of immigration?
Yeah, I think it's something that we've seen in our county. We're incredibly grateful for all of our older white volunteers, which we have a ton of. And it's beautiful because when we have them show up as responders, there's a very different energy that they get met with by these ICE officers versus young brown folks, right? Like, especially the older ones. We have one of our patrollers, Michael Johnson, or we have a few other people that are patrolling regularly. And they are the ones, especially the faith-based ones. I think Christine was talking about how like they had their different assignments at Delaney Hall, and some people were singing and some people were carrying on like that and playing that support. That is something that plays a huge role in this. Because, for example, when we first had a lot of our meetings and we had so many non-Spanish speaking white folks that showed up, we had to be like, okay, how are they going to be able to support and help us build this? They were the ones that went out and talked to all the local small businesses to make sure that their employees got everything squared away and that their employees knew how to respond and react in case ICE showed up to their neighborhoods. They were the ones that were able to connect us with the schools, with the school districts, and talk to teachers and administrators to be able to get us in there so we could run workshops and do things. They were the ones that helped us pull donations for a lot of things. And more importantly, they were the ones that through some of the churches, they were the ones where we had those early workshops, a lot of the workshops, and we had our support teams that developed out from those churches specifically to be able to tend to those folks. The one thing with the food pantry is, for example, the food pantries or the food distribution events like Food Shares, our local food distribution event, is we made sure that a lot of the folks understood it's like, hey, find your local food share. There's one going on somewhere in the county every day of the week in multiple locations. Be there, be a volunteer, but more importantly, make sure everybody there has our outreach material, has our number, has someone that they could contact, have someone that they could do. And when we as a group put out a call or do something like that, there is an extra weight behind it of having the churches support it and also co-sign it and also say, hey, we are behind this as well. Because once we started facing repression, again, it goes back to the importance of not covering up our faces and not hiding who we are. When we started facing repression, it's like, how are you going to call us domestic terrorists when look at all the religious groups that are supporting us and following us, and look at our volunteer base? Look at, you're going to call my mother a domestic terrorist? She's a 68-year-old Mexican lady. Like, she's like, in what world does that fit? So we also have to play that role of understanding the visuals of having the religious groups and how the community sees us and how these ICE agents might see us, is by having them be at the forefront and having them bring in the faith-based practices when we have rallies or when we have events or when we have things like that. It's we know that we're standing side by side with them. So it's very vital and important for them to be able to also do something within their capacity that plays to their strengths. We want to play to everybody's strengths.
Thank you, Leo. It looks like Sally has her hand raised.
Yeah, when you mentioned, spreading what you did to Chicago and Minneapolis, I thought, I thought of New Jersey Organizing Project after Sandy, who the minute Ida hit, they were all calling those communities and spreading the word about how to deal with FEMA. The connection and the networking is so important. And I noticed you said you're working with Breakthrough News. They, of course, are now being targeted by the Trump administration along with the People's Forum and the third group. So kudos to you for continuing with them. And we at Pacifica are going to, we have Breakthrough News on our station, and we're supporting that also. Unfortunately, around here we have the 287G arrangements that they're trying to push to force the police to work with ICE. And a few years ago we were fighting that kind of hard. I'm not sure where that stands now, but we did manage to get some level of immigrant protection at the state level, but not all we wanted, as usual. And I have a really horrible thing that I saw today. This is the second source I've seen. This one has at least a petition, so you can feel like you're. ICE is now wanting to use electric gloves to harass people, to capture people. There's 20,000 sending electric shocks through gloves. So I'll put the link to the petition and the site so Congress has to stop that. That's bleepity bleep stuff cannot happen to our people. Just can't. So
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? If you don't, I probably can have some myself. Jim, I thought you might have some interesting questions to ask Leo or to elucidate on points.
I'll defer at this point to you, Cindy, or to anyone else who might have a question.
Okay, thank you, Jim. All right, so what I was going to ask you is how are ICE connected with the Geo Group, and there's another group that seems to be benefiting. Let's see, Core Civic. I guess they run the so-called detention centers. Could you talk to us about that at all?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most devastating parts of it is that up until a few years, immigrant detention centers didn't exist, right? We understand that Geo Group and Core Civic, coming from the private prison industry, saw a huge opportunity to make a tremendous amount of money, whereas we knew what their problems were with the private prison industry, and it's even easier to make money off the immigration detention system because there's no, at least with the private prison industry, there was citizens and everybody was a citizen, and they're trying to push back on them and trying to hold them accountable and lawsuits and this and that. But with undocumented folks, it is a very scared community that is not going to necessarily try to poke their head above water and start flinging lawsuits around and hold them accountable for giving people moldy, rotten food and brutalizing and beating folks up, which was horrifying when we started hearing those stories come out early last year. The closest local facility that we have that is a Geo Group facility, they have two of them technically. They're in Adelanto, which is maybe a 2.5 hour drive from where we're at. That is where it's the default place where they pretty much send everybody in Southern California. Maybe not Southern California. There's another one close to San Diego, but in the Los Angeles area and in our area, almost everybody goes to the Adelanto facility. We have gone down there multiple times. We have held protests there. We have joined with so many other groups to hold their feet to the fire. We've supported the hunger strikes there. But even then, it's something to where the solution for something like that is so much harder. Right. For us as an organization, we will always support and we will always back that and we will always go out there. But we tend to not focus too much, even on local electoral politics, because we feel that the energy that we put in to, I don't know, 2-3 hours of being at a city council meeting is energy that we would rather put into knocking on doors for 2 or 3 hours. Right. There's no substitute on the face of this planet to knocking on doors and talking to the people at their homes and visiting them where they're at. Like that is, I think, the main reason why we've become as strong as we have and have as much support as we have is because we've been constantly knocking on doors, constantly visiting the same neighborhoods over and over. And it really is it really is difficult once somebody gets into a detention center. It's just so hard because there's no incentive for them to do a decent job. When we try to deposit money on people's books, sometimes the names don't pop up, even though we have the A number, and even though they were there last week, all of a sudden this week, for some reason, they're not there, and they'll pop up again next week. The phone calls quality is trash. The phone calls are insanely expensive. All these things to where it's like, where's the resolve? You can't. If it was hard to get a private prison shut down, now we're talking about a private federal detention center. That's a nightmare. And it's not just the Geo Group and it's not just the private prisons, but so much of the ICE's operation has been outsourced. Locally here, even though we might have a bunch of ICE officers, I think half of them, or at least a little more than half of them, are subcontractors. They're private contractors. They're not federal ICE agents themselves. They're operating under the direction of a federal ICE agent, but they're private contractors themselves. Or like I was talking about the check-in facility that Jim hangs out at, that is one of their federal facilities, but a few miles away, a bunch of people get sent to check-ins at another office, and that's a private office as well. There's nobody there that's a they're all federal contractors. None of them are, it's not an official facility. It's not, so it's not just the private prisons, it's the infrastructure around all of this ICE terror operation that has been outsourced to so many different other private entities that it's just a massive money grab because nobody has any incentive or nobody's being held accountable to anything. As it is, the federal officers themselves aren't being held accountable to anything. So the private contractors, even less.
Oh, it's so wonderful to hear you just elucidate, Leo, on what's actually going on. Sally, you have your hand raised. Is that a new question or is that from last time?
It's new. I'm thinking of all the, we think our county prisons are public prisons, and yeah, they are, but all their contracts, they have private medical, private ARA, crap food. The number of corporations that make so much money off our prisons, both ICE and otherwise, is horrifying. Christine, you said, and I know that Delaney Hall is right next to the Essex County prison. We got to do something for those prisoners too, next door in the Essex County jail. It's oh boy.
Yeah. You mentioned that, the Geo and the core group, they're being paid. Well, at least Geo is being paid for the Delaney Hall facility, 60 million taxpayer dollars a year. And they cannot even provide a decent meal.
Well,
They
sure,
can't even
because
give people their medicine.
anything they don't
They
spend, they put in their pocket and send to their shareholders and pay their executives. It's horrible. It's
Right.
capitalism at its worst.
60, for $60 million, what do you get? You have what, 800 people, there. You should have a regular staff. And the fact that they will, as part of their agreement, they should have that they will allow regular inspections. They don't even allow the facility to be inspected.
Oh,
Who in their right mind would give a contract to a group that wouldn't allow inspections,
mhm.
and wouldn't provide air conditioning and adequate medical staff? It's just inconceivable to me
We
that this is
remember
going on.
we remember Representative MacIver and Ross Baraka and the others, Bonnie Watson Coleman, being arrested, and LaMonica Iver's charges are still pending, 17 years worth for doing her job and inspecting Delaney Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of work to do, Sally.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we do. And just the whole area that it was down there, it was just it's an insult upon insult upon insult. Fathers, brothers,
Mhm.
sisters, mothers, being held in this facility by, in many cases, ICE agents, some of whom have taken this job, but I wonder if they really, really want to have that job. And when we were there, I had heard of a priest that comes regularly to Delaney Hall. And in one point, when as he was being arrested or confronted by an ICE agent, they actually prayed together, and this pastor prayed with him that this ICE agent would find a better job. And this ICE agent was praying with him that he wanted to find a better job. So there's a whole spectrum of situations with the ICE agents, but we know that they're not trained in caring or congeniality. They are cruel agents of cruelty, and uncaring. And so that on so many levels, there's perhaps an avenue maybe do something. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that, and I thank you all. I'm deeply moved by what I've heard tonight, and I don't know, because I'm on the outside. I don't know if we have a system um, for immigrants in our city, in Newark. I live far, far away from Newark. They wouldn't get their quota if they came up to Sparta. Let's put it like that. It would be a waste of energy, but they were trying to get pretty close at Roxbury, but that
Yeah.
which is down in a more populated immigrant area, just south of where I live. But that's been shut down, at least for a while. They just, and I just wanted to mention, you've given me an idea too, because I mentioned that I work for the Food Shed Alliance that works at the junction of food, farming, and the environment. And we do free pop-up markets in areas of our county, and Warren County, Sussex and Warren counties, the northwest corner, that are economically challenged communities. And we do that on a regular basis. But I do not think that any person that is undocumented would come to them, even though they're just like, really friendly little pop-ups, markets with all this free perishables and non-perishables. And the perishables have been freshly harvested that day from farms. But perhaps somebody that is coming to avail themselves of the free food, perhaps they know somebody who might, want to receive help in some way, encouragement, support, connection, like the connections that Leo, you have been mentioning. I know they're there.
They are.
I know these folks are there. They're just not they're not, we don't have huge agricultural,
Just have to
fields,
find that
and we don't
trusted
have big
contact.
cities. We have we're little towns. We're little, towns of 2,000 people. Sparta's the biggest, 19,000 where I live, but 1,000, 5,000, a community of little towns in this rural area. And I know that folks are there. The reason I know that they're there is because I see them sometimes. I think walking along the side of the road, am I wrong? Riding bicycles rather than cars. I see them working with landscaping companies in the townhouse complex that I live in Sparta. I know they're there, and I know that they would appreciate a connection, to support.
What helped us out a lot, and this was something from the very beginning that we understood when we started doing the outreach within the communities, is that we understood that there was going to be a huge difference between putting out in the groups or showing up in the neighborhoods and saying, hey, we're going to do a Know Your Rights workshop with you guys. We knew that it would be a very, very different response from saying that versus saying, hey, come hang out with us at the park that you guys have here. We will bring a bunch of rotisserie chickens. Who's going to put in the rice? Who's going to put in the beans? We'll bring a jolly jumper, and who's bringing the Bluetooth speaker? Let's all hang out. Let's have a good time, blah, 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 whatever. So that early on was super easy for us to pull in a group of people that normally, even if they didn't care that much about the workshop that we were going to run, at the very least, we know that they would show up with their kids. They would show up because they knew there was going to be a jumper, a little air inflatable jumper for their kids to run around in. They knew there was going to be music. They knew there was going to be food. And one of the more important things is that it was super key that we explained to all the volunteers is every single neighborhood that we have across the country has In Spanish, they're called the mamás luchonas, but they're the scrappy moms. It is the moms, the grandmothers that live in those neighborhoods that have those relationships already with all their neighbors. They're the ones already doing the work, trying to provide resources and trying to take care of their neighbors. And all we have to do is find them, connect with them, and that ends up being a super shortcut to building trust with the community, and also not having to start from scratch, because they're the ones that are going to pull people out. They're the ones that are going to pull people in. They're the ones that are going to, they're that piece that's going to tie everything together when we provide them with the resources to do what they need. And they're the ones that are going to have the most energy to be active in those neighborhoods. So it's also why, like, the title portion of my part of it was defending joy and organizing rage, because those are kind of the two emotions that we have to balance out, right? So many of the families that we connected with, we might have met them on the worst day of their lives, but because we continue to do this, and because if we have something going on over here with a little party and a hangout, we'll be like, hey, you guys, we'll invite those families out and they'll come out. So when we look back at our relationship with certain families, we don't have just the traumatic time of the incident that affected them the most, but we also have birthdays that we shared. We also had celebrations that we shared. We also had hangouts that we shared. And it also made it a lot easier for our volunteers that were maybe they worked in the entertainment industry, or they worked at one of the local venues. It was easy for them to be like, hey, why don't we do an event over here? Why don't we do a fundraiser over here? And the important part with those is they had to be culturally relevant. So even though you might have a small little pockets. I wish Diane was still in the group, because Diane works in a town called Ojai, and Ojai is a small town of some affluent white folks that are there, but there's little pockets of undocumented Spanish speaking folks there, and all of them know each other. So the benefit of having a city like that, or in like in East County, Thousand Oaks, Newbury Park, where it's a lot of MAGA middle class stuff, but you still have pockets of concentrated undocumented folks that are Spanish speakers. The advantage there is that everybody knows each other. So once you tap into the scrappy moms there and said, hey, let's have a party, or hey, let's have a fundraiser, or hey, who's putting up their garage, or who's putting up their home, or who's putting up their, the apartment complex, the little plaza in the middle, help us put this together. That's where you really start to see that flood come out. You have to, more bees with honey? Like, you gotta start with the honey, pull in the honey. Food distribution. You could find some of these volunteers from those neighborhoods to be like, hey, can you guys come out to our food event and take some food back to the folks that that would benefit from this the most, and start to build those tethers that way. It's key. I think it's the main difference between us and so many other organizations, that we lead with the fun, we lead with the joy, we lead with the encouragement and support for that.
Sure. Good ideas.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Christine. I see, Terry, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a couple of comments. In Miami, we worked really hard to try to get the juvenile detention center closed in Homestead, which is like a 30-minute drive from our congregation. And so we had a group of people heading down on a regular basis, and we got it closed. But that wasn't much of a victory, because all they did was move the kids somewhere else, and not necessarily a better place. So that's kind of discouraging. I want to comment also about the food contamination problem. And I see that as more a labor issue. The Some farmers provide porta potties and take good care of their help, and those SOBs that made people sick were cutting corners. If you had to go to the bathroom, you had to pull your pants down and poop in front of everybody onto the food. Well, no wonder it's contaminated. It's a good reason to shut the jerks down. So, any rate, that's my 2 cents worth on that comment.
Thank you, Terry. Yeah, that farmer conditions have got to be these connections have to be made. I didn't even know about that. Sally, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I know a couple of years ago we did a program with the Coalition of Immokalee Workers and their fair food program, where they're getting a penny a pound of tomatoes for most of the food fast food companies except Wendy's at last hearing, and using it to inspect and make sure that the working conditions are good, and getting folks certified to the employers that buy in are the ones who get the credit, and yeah, so.
Brian, when you were talking earlier, I wasn't sure if you felt like you got any questions answered, but one thing you mentioned was what your congregation is already doing that kind of may facilitate further work with ICE. And one of the things you mentioned was food share and the whole food issue. And I think that's one that connects what almost everybody here has had to say, because when ICE comes and takes the parents and leaves the children or leaves the wife and children, people need to be fed. And so that's a huge part of this. I didn't know if you had anything else you might like to say, or if anybody else would want to comment on that. Maybe Leo or Jim, you could say something about what VC Defense does in terms of providing food for families where the children have been left to fend for themselves or just have a parent. And then, okay, I have one other thing I'll say, but that's enough for now.
When children, we had it a lot after the initial raid that happened in June. So many children were either left at the daycare place and nobody picked them up, or we had one instance I remember where it was 3 couples, so 6 adults. They were all related to each other and they were all renting a house together, and all of them had their respective kids as well. But all of them worked at the same place. So when that raid happened, the only thing that kind of saved them was one of those adults was sick that day and he didn't go to work. But all the other 5 people got arrested, detained, and deported. So now you have one adult taking care of, I think it was something like 6, 7 kids. And that was devastating, right? When it comes to the kids that are left behind or the kids that are left with one parent, that is a part of the conversations that we have with folks, is be like, okay, cool. Where are the needs? What are your needs here? By default, everybody always knows. Every Friday, there's the food distribution at the local community college that we support. But also here at the shop, physically where I'm at right now, we have a pantry. And the pantry is always available for anybody that wants to show up at any point in time. And most people do that throughout the day, throughout the week they show up. But also there are those cases where folks are like, hey, I can't leave. I don't have a car, or I don't drive, or it's older folks that don't leave their house that often. Can you guys bring us the food? Yes, of course we can. We try not to push and promote that part of it too much, because then the whole world is going to be like, well, why show up when you could just deliver it to us? Which happened initially after the raid. It is very labor intensive to go do food deliveries. We're not opposed to doing them, but we definitely do them. And because of our connection with a lot of the other food pantries and a lot of the other food distribution spots across the county that we developed over the course of the last year, because that was one of the main outreach points for us. Because of those relationships, if somebody calls from 2 towns over and says, hey, I need food, it's like, all right, we got you right now, but also every Tuesday, 3 blocks from your house is the food. Oh, I didn't know that they were there. Oh, okay, cool. Now I know, and blah, blah. And we'd call them and be like, hey, we're going to do some promo for you guys out there, but also can you take care of this person? And if they ever need anything, please let us know. And we'll have the local volunteer that's there tend to them specifically and bring anything extra that maybe is not available there, right? Menstrual pads, diapers, things like that. We'll try to cater to them in that sense. But we've also done a ton of things as far as kids. We've taken them to different cities to live with to go move with the different family members. At the beginning of summer this year and last year, we've taken multiple trips down to the border, which is 2.5 hours away from where we're at, to reconnect children with their parents, either permanently or just for the summer. I just came back on Monday from bringing a group of kids back to this side so that they could start school, because they started school yesterday. So it's on a case-by-case basis, but we do try to bend over backwards to make sure that we have that taken care of. We also have one of our immigration attorneys early on, he was a family he took care of family court stuff, so he takes care of any of the documentation that we need to, so that we could have legal guardians be transferred over, even if both parents are gone. He takes care of that stuff. Yeah. It's just something that had to develop out of the necessity of it, but we do try to find the best case scenario for everyone.
Leo, our time is starting to get short, but I wonder, what we've done here today will be up online, and there may be people see that would need to hear the information. But I'm wondering if you could talk about what vulnerable parents could do ahead of time to try to protect their children legally in case they get deported.
Yeah, the good thing, thank God, is we haven't run into too many roadblocks in regards to that. We always stress at our workshops, and we have an in-house public notary that is more than happy to get all, we work on getting all the paperwork together, and then they get that stamped and legally covered and everything else in case anything happens. It's a part of what we recommend to families. Not only have the power of attorney with who you're going to leave your kids in charge of signed and ready to roll, but also same thing with like any bank information, any titles to cars, leave them signed, because we've had to do that too, where somebody's taken, so we have to sell off the extra car or the two cars that they have to make sure that we could cover this month's rent or the blah blah blah, just to have some money left over. Any medical information, because like it was touched on earlier, when people end up in these detention facilities, they don't give them their medicine. So we want to make sure that we at least know what people's conditions are. That's where the doctor group came in really handy, because they'll write a lot of letters to the local to the Adelanto facility to get people their medicine, which has worked a few times. It's not always super responsive on their end, but we have had successes in that regards. So it's getting all your ducks in order and everything squared away and organized, which on one side, it's easy to explain this to folks and get everybody thinking, yeah, I should do that. But we have a very low success rate of families that actually end up doing that. Unfortunately, people think it's not going to happen to them. The most planning and preparation that we've had is when somebody's arrested and we talk to the family says, oh yeah, we already talked about that. They're going to sign their self-deportation. They don't want to sit in a detention center forever. That's kind of the extent of the preparation that most families we run into end up doing, which is unfortunate, because I get it. To have the public notary get the power of attorney, that means you have to have the birth certificates ready. You have to have paperwork ready. You have to have your IDs ready. You have to have all kinds of things ready before we can even stamp that and get it processed. So multiply that by 3 kids, 4 kids, it's not necessarily high on people's priority lists when they already have to think about what am I going to do work-wise, or even before the deportation happens. Like I said earlier, there's so many issues that are already plaguing these families with food insecurity, housing insecurity, work insecurity. So it's a difficult, but it's the reality of it.
And plus what that does emotionally, it's a hard thing to do.
Jim has his hand raised, but Leo, before we go, you must give any contact information that you would want the public to have. Jim.
Yes, that's what I was just going to suggest, that Christine and Leo could leave any contact information they might want to leave.
Christine, unfortunately, has already left us.
I can come up with the website for that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Sally.
We're easy to find with a Google search. We have our website up. We're on all the social medias. We have our hotline number everywhere. Give us a call, and we're more than happy to answer any questions. We have dispatchers around the clock that are ready to answer the phones. But just bcdefensa.org, or like I said, do a Google search. We pop up, and all our contact info is there. I try to make it as easy as possible for anybody to be able to get a hold of us.
Yeah.
I really appreciate everybody joining us. Brian, I'm so happy your congregation is active. And thank you all. And Leo, thank you very, very much. And Christine, although you've already left us, we appreciate your joining us too.
I appreciate you guys, and it was an honor to be with you today.
Thank you. The link for the New Jersey UU State Advocacy Network is uufaithaction.org. So.
Okay, thank you, Sally. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, everybody.